for Southwestern Studies, and he does the online Texas history course for the entire UP system. So we're looking forward to having him. And then in October, we're going to have Dr. Ron Tyler come and talk about his new book, Texas Lithographs. So that'll be really good. We may or may not have a special event in July. And if we do, it'll be on the history of the Kennedale School. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jim. He's going to talk to us about the history of Kennedale.
It's always a pleasure to be here. This is at least my second time, or third time, so I've lost credits. So I'm amazed at so many things happen. I've learned some many new things. So the slides it keeps getting longer and longer as I add things to it. So just a word to start with. A little bit about myself. I'm a former newspaper journalist. I worked at the Dallas Morning News. I was early before we started covering it. But I got my natural education by working for the Corps of Engineers in Fort Worth, where I worked with several projects where they restored environments around lakes, so that's where I got my sort of natural education, and I'm a master naturalist at the time. So I think there's a lot of different spots. This brochure giving you out is drastically out of date in many ways. Principle one is the name of the preserve is no longer called the Southwest Nature Preserve. Okay? It was renamed about 2 years ago in honor of the woman who was instrumental, Councilwoman Sheri Capehart, instrumental in saving the land for posterity. She arranged for it. She loved this land for a long period of time. And she got the Trust for Public Land to buy it, and voters of Arlington agreed to spend $13 million to buy the land and improve it to the park that you see today. So it's been renamed for her. So Sheri Capehart's name is very important here. But the lovely thing about this brochure, and since we run out, I'll tell you, is it does have a pretty terrific trail map. And it's pretty good. So you can use that and stick that in your pocket and go out there. And I'll point out a few things that are all not on this map. So anyway, Kennedale Mountain, if you're looking at the right angle, it's pretty impressive. I found just the right angle. It's now probably not as tall as the Fort Worth Dump. I'm sad to say, Fort Worth Dump keeps getting taller and taller. And I looked at a recent topographic map, and it showed the Fort Worth Dump is this huge, huge mountain. But anyway, it's 100 feet tall up from the drainage up to the top of the mountain. So that's not shape. Okay, for those of you who want to show of hands, raise your hands if you have set foot at least one time inside the nature preserve. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm very pleased. Well, it's only 1 mile from downtown Kennedale, okay? So the rest of you find a way to get down Dick Price Road or from Bowman Springs and just park your car in there. Just wander up. 5 minutes is all it takes to see. You can see a lot in 5 minutes, or you can spend a half a day with it if you want. Now this map, Kennedale Mountain, really looks impressive as a topographic, and that's because it's fairly steep, especially on the western side. There's basically a cliff there. All right, we're going to go real fast, so feel free to try to keep up with me, but don't pay too close attention. This is the area we call the Cross Timbers. It's a unique ecological zone that's looked like this for about 7,000 years. Blackjack oak and post oak dominated forest, sandstone everywhere, it's kind of sandy soils, and it's in this strip that goes all the way up, I think all the way goes through Oklahoma down through central Texas, across timbers ecosystems. kind of unique, interesting place. This is some of the sandstone we're talking about. And this from 93 million years. This is where we're going to start. So we're going to skip all the history before that. We're just going to jump way ahead to 93 million years ago. Okay, when Texas was under the ocean, and it gradually receded. It had to do with the separation of the continents and all that good stuff. So anyway, the bottom of the sea became a sandstone line there. It's called the Woodbine Sandstone. You know where Woodbine, Texas is in East Texas. Big oil strike back in the 30s because that oil was in the sandstone. And that same layer of rock comes up at an angle. So whereas it's several thousand feet deep in Woodbine, Texas, by the time it gets up to Kennedale, it's come up the surface. So it's the same, exact same layer. Well, 10,000 years ago, Texas was in this process of warming up. The ice ages have just passed. It's hard to believe that the forests around here were largely spruce and pine trees when it was cooler and wetter. But after about 7,000 years ago, it became a little bit warmer, and that's when human beings start showing up in this area. Let me see. Okay, what are the people that eat back thousands of years ago? The people that lived here, the Kennedale area, and on Kennedale Mountain, they ate everything to stay alive. So you can see the variety of stuff between mussels and turtles and bison and deer and bears, everything they could find. Early efforts, they did some early efforts at farming, including crops that you don't even recognize as human crops. Little barley, this is a little barley plant that you can see it at the Nature Preserve. It was very hard to get human food out of it, but there is protein in there. And what it is, all these things that are listed here, those 5 things, they're the same things that buffalo ate. So the human beings would kind of trail on buffalo where the buffalo were, and they could eat some of the same thing. But it took a lot of preparation, and it was a hassle. Then 1,000 years ago came corn, and it was so much easier to grow and so much easier to store. So that changed everything. We have a lot of evidence of what the human beings were around Kennedale, thanks to the University of Texas at Arlington, which conducted 2 different digs in the 1990s. And they were, I think they were just south of Kennedale. They are, let's see, south or west of Kennedale. West of Kennedale, but east of Birch Creek. And they don't want to tell you exactly where it is in order to protect it. I don't exactly know any more than that. Where it is. They got permission from several landowners to go out there. And they learned a lot of stuff. So they found the tools from this area, these particular arrowheads, or from the period 700 to 1700. So that's relatively recent. They also found pits where they did some cooking. One of the things they often did is they smashed bones of large animals to get the marrow out. And they had pots, and they would use these pots to store the marrow. Marrow is a very nutritious and very good source of protein and fat for them to eat that. So the tie here directly to Kennedale Mountain is Wayne Winters used to go out there all the time, and he found those particular arrowheads in the field across the street from the reserve, across from Bowman Springs. It's now where there's a bunch of new houses in the last 3 years, so don't go wondering where there's arrowheads in. So there was a very sparse population up until the 1830s. It was hard to live off the land, which is very, very hard. So not a whole lot of people could do it through hunting that they did, bears gathering and stuff like that. It was just hard to live off the land. So not large populations, very small families. 1830s, though, things around here changed. because of the geopolitics of what was going on in the nation and in Texas. The Kennedale tribe, who were farmers in East Texas, were driven out of East Texas. And they fled for their lives, basically, because the Europeans were coming in and they kept pressuring them to find the Indians' land, so they fled to the west to seek some sort of refuge. So they came to Village Creek, and they settled along Village Creek, and eventually they had set up a cleared land, farming 300 acres of land on Village Creek, just north of here. So exactly where it is, where Lake Arlington is, where the Lake Arlington golf course, clubhouse is. Nobody exactly knows for sure, but it was a very, very big population. To give you some idea of the population density, back when there were hundreds of gatherers before there were farmers here, the tribes, this whole county could probably only support about 900 human beings. It just wasn't enough game, enough berries and so forth to keep that population. So by comparison, from one person per square mile back then, today Kennedale has about 1,300 people per square mile. So it's about 1,500 more people that are living here now than were living here. So another evidence that we have of human beings around here is the evidence of Comanches and Kennedale used Kennedale Mountain as a lookout for defensive purposes. And well, how do we know this? We have some oral data from people handed down from their grandfather, great-grandfather, and so forth, that they use this as a lookout, primarily looking towards Fort Worth. The way I heard it was that it was the militia based in Fort Worth. First fort that was set up in Fort Worth. It could have been just other tribes. And who these Indians were, hard to tell. We know there were 3 or 4 different tribes that were living along Village Creek at the same time, not just Cattle, but the Cherokees and other tribes. And the Comanches did farm, so they didn't live along Village Creek. They were hunters, and so they were further west from here. But we think that they may have set up on Kennedale Mountain because it was such a high point. And I didn't know this until a few years ago, but the Comanches had a very intricate signal station network. It was a network. So using smoke signals, they had hills that were visible to each other. The furthest one to the east is somewhere in Dallas. It's been identified very clearly as a Comanche signal station, but most of them were in central Texas. So they could communicate back and forth because they had all sorts of enemies too, so they were trying to keep track of the enemies, most of the other Indian tribes. So anyway, there's a lookout here. Now this particular spot on the Kennedale Mountain is not open to the public. We try to keep it out. But it's a great, great viewpoint right nearby where the public viewpoint is, where there's a nice sign at the rough view of the point on the trail. So the woman red hair is a Comanche expert. She came out and she was helping us to help identify whether this was a Indian sign. Well, there's some unusual markings on the bluff right here. Again, this is near the top of Kennedale Mountain, where the public trail is. What that thing is in the upper right hand, I don't know. But, she was intrigued by it. I was intrigued by it. Was that some sort of a cooking thing? Was that word firewood? Smoke signals? How do you tell? On the left, there's a fair amount of carving that people done all through time. This is the oldest one that I could identify. It's pretty hard to see. But in here, there's the 1, there's the 8, and I think this is a 7, and that might be a 0 or a 98. So 1880 or 1890 or something like that. So 1800s. That's a long time ago. Europeans only showed up in 1840, so this would have been maybe 20, 30 years after the first Europeans showed up here. So again, that's not a place that we don't advertise that's there if you want to protect it. Frederick Remington, this is a painting he did of Plains Indians. The painting is called Smoke Signal. It's at the Indian Garden Museum. And this is this gives you a sense of how it's used in communication class. Smoke signals were also used by Chinese, a lot of other people. This is not unique to India, but it was a simple way to communicate over long distances. Okay, on the preserve, about 5 years ago, we were walking around, we had a little arborist come along with us, and he looks up to this tree that you're seeing here, and he said, "Man, that's really a big old tree, you should check it out and see, this might be a really old tree." So we did. And it turned out it's over 200 years old. And it's now registered as a Texas historic tree. It's got a name. It's called the Kennedale Oak. And it's very visible along the north side of this trail. It goes right under on the north side of the preserve. And it's the oldest post oak in the city of Arlington. Discovered about 5 years ago. Yeah, it is. This was here when the Caddos were living here. A brief period of time when the Caddos lived in this area. It was a sapling of some kind. So what were the Caddos like? Well, we know a fair amount about this because there was a battle that took place, and there were some scribes and the military men, and they took note of what they saw after the battle, during the battle, and you can see there's a lot of European influences among the Caddo. Again, I said they were farmers. They grew corn, beans, and pumpkins. And there were approximately 3,000 of these Native Americans living along Village Creek at this time in 1840. Consider the fact that the population before the Indians arrived was minimum, maybe 800 people, 700. Suddenly there's 3,000 people, and they're all living within a 3 or 4 mile stretch along Village Creek. So this is kind of a dramatic change in this area. They also had some of the lodges that had feather beds in them, and they wore western clothes. I got a typo right here. The 1850 census that the U.S. government conducted could find only 664 people in Tanner County. So all these villagers, under the pressure from the Texas militia, fled further west for safety. This is the first plat we have, which gives an indication of the lands that were carved up. David Strickland was a veteran of the Texas Revolution, and what they did is they gave a lot of land to the people who fought in the Revolution. So they just handed out tracts of land. So one of them came to David Strickland. There's no evidence that Mr. Strickland ever lived here. A lot of times the veterans would turn around and sell the land that they got to somebody else, and they would carve it up forever. So this is the 1856 map. By 1895, you can see that the holdings have been broken up into lots of tiny pieces. This green is where you see the nature preserve, that sort of jagged line across the top there, which is also the route I-20, was also a wagon trail, and probably before that was an Indian trail. So interstate highway was a pretty good route. So there's all sorts of evidence of man's existence at the nature preserve and on Kennedale Mountain. And one of the things that we found was an abandoned well. At the time when we found it, after Mr. Winters found it, there was no cover to this well. Fortunately, it's in the woods a little bit, but it was probably about 10 or 12 feet deep. So anyone could have fallen into it, and you'd be lost in the world. So fortunately, we told the Arlington Parks and Rec about it, and came in and they covered it up. But this is probably an area where there was a lot of farming done in this immediate vicinity. This is very close to that cattle oak tree that I showed you. We also have the legacy of aerial photography beginning in 1942 when the War Department was looking for places to build airfields across Texas. So he had aerial mapping everywhere. So we've got all these photos of region from 1942 up to the present. So we know sort of what the land looked like back in the old days. And as you can see, it's somewhat on the dry side, but there's trees everywhere. Except These here, you can see here, this is a farm acreage. And at the top, 2 farm acreage in here, you can see that they did some farming. And like other places, a lot of them, because the price of cotton was so good, they grew cotton like crazy for the early part of the 1900s or the 1800s. And it grew and grew and grew until the soil wore out. So what we inherited that preserve is these areas that were farmed, the soil was pretty much gone. All that's left is clay. So it's been desiccated. All right. As we march forward, the old map is on the left, new map is on the right. John Wilson set up a modern cattle ranch, modern in terms of the 1950s. And so he made a lot of improvements. In the 1950s, those who know their local history, was a great period of drought. And so all the ranchers, they had to get busy finding water for their stock. So John Wilson built some ponds. You see the circle of the main pond there was his, the very top, stock pond. And the very left is called the north pond. These are all dammed up. And apparently good springs underneath that main pond, so it's got good water. No matter what the drought is, it's got good water all the time. Here's more ranching relics. This is near where back out here. This is this right here is where the ranch manager's house was built. It was a nice brick house for the ranch manager. And this is probably a brick that's part of the ranch manager's house. I can't read. There was one or two brick companies here in Canada. Does anyone remember what their names were? Thurber. That could have been, that might be Thurber right there. Yeah. Other ranching notes that you can see when the city took it over, it's like to leave a lot of these relics. This is a foundation for some kind of storage unit. You could back up a truck with your loading on the was storing. There were Santa Cruz cattle that were ranched there on John Wilson's ranch. They're a little bit on the mean side, but the kids didn't want to get too close. Other ranching roads, the barbed wire, the fencing in the upper right area somebody's told me it's like a hog fence. I think there was hogs at one point. Hogs were very lucrative at one point. Farms lifted back another.
What's that thing named being under there?
This is another great mystery. You don't know what it is. We think it has to maybe help some kind of tank or something. It's at a high point in Kennedale Mountain where there was some kind of pump house. So it's in one point they were drawing water out of the main pond, which had water all the time, to distribute elsewhere to stock tanks elsewhere on the property. So it's probably related to that, but nobody seems to know what it is. Even people that are familiar with old ranch pond. And of course, farm on Kennedale Mountain, so when you consider, again, in the old days, we're talking about back in World War II or before, what did you do for recreation? Well, if you've got a mountain playground 1 mile away from your house, that's a good place to hang out with your friends and buddies and neighbors and girls and so forth. So they made most of it and made that as a kind of central place. And I bet a few of you here, when you were young, you were not to Kennedale Mountain. I don't think any of you were in this picture.
No, I wasn't even thought of yet then. My daddy wasn't that picture.
So as a chain, we got another ad here. 7 years past that last aerial. You can see the land's changed again. So it looks like more land has been cleared of trees in order to improve the ranching operations of John Wilson Ranch. Moving forward another 20 years, now we have Bill and Rosa Fagan, who purchased the land at some point to develop it, and he helped develop, the Fagans helped develop the houses that were built along here. And he also opened a trailer park right here. And there were a lot of ne'er-do-wells that lived in the trailer park. It was the rock bottom of housing. And eventually the city of Arlington shut it down because I think it had no septic facility whatsoever. And so it was a health menace. So that was, Mr. Fagan was quite an entrepreneur looking for ways to get money. So that was one of the things he did. And this, he actually moved a house down this spot right here. He likes to move houses. So he moved a house in the middle of the preserve, and it's a pretty good spot. So we're looking at that main pond. And so he lived there for, I don't know, 20 years or so on his property. And it's sort of to the right was some sort of a party house. Again, I think it was a structure that he moved there as well to entertain, or who knows exactly what. So 20 years ago, the city bought the property, as I mentioned, and it opened it up 11 years ago as a managed nature preserve. Some of the improvements that went underway, we have here this gigantic spillway. The city decided it was dangerous not to have very reinforced drainage. The main pond, right, drains to the middle pond, to the south pond, and the south pond drains into the Village Creek system. Here you see the houses that have been brought in on the side, and also these houses are new. They're all in Kennedale. Kennedale's this border. Kennedale's also on the left border too. And the city decided there was no historic value to the slab underneath the Fagan's house. So they came in with heavy equipment and air hammers, and they busted it all up and hauled it all away. So there's no remnants left of the house. The road that led down to his house that he used to access the house was terribly eroded. It was a gravel road just down here. A moment is going to just stop for just a moment. This photo, and many others, was taken by Bob Wren, who just passed last week. He was a great photographer and spent a lot of time preserving a lot of his film.
And in Sonora Park, he was always down there making pictures of the nature when I was walking. All right.
There you go. And he always had his camera with him. He said, oh. Anyway, the city brought in boulders in order to stop erosion. These boulders are all from the same sandstone, wood-lined sandstone that's found elsewhere in the park. So the boulders are not from the park, but they match the same wear. And as you can see, it's no longer a eroded gravel driveway down to Mr. Fagan's house. It's done its job with wildflowers and so forth. Out of preserve, there are all sorts of wonders out there. And one of them is the Glen Rose yucca. This is a yucca that was only determined to be an independent species about 30 years ago by an SMU professor who was out at nearby, in Lynn County nearby, and he noticed that this particular yucca looked different than other yuccas. It was more. So he guessed that it was either a cross between two yuccas, like the Arkansas yucca and something else, or it was a unique species. About 10 years after he made this assertion, two different groups of scientists, several years apart, were able to verify using DNA to determine that this is indeed a unique species. You see from the yellow, this is where the only place in the world where you can find this. And we probably have about 500 of these plants preserved, including the large yucca meadow called the Glen Rose yucca meadow that's on the trail when you go walking around. And the thing that makes it unique is that it looks just like Arkansas yucca, but the significant thing is when it's in bloom right now, it blooms like off the branches of a Christmas tree, all different directions. There's a central stalk, all sorts of branches. And the blooms are all on the branches. In Arkansas yucca, the blooms are all tight to the stem. So it's a very different blooming pattern that you don't see. So that's how you tell it apart. It's that stalk. Another cool thing is the farkleberry. The farkles and laughing. Anybody remember the farkles? Oh, you see you're laughing? I guess it's a funny word, why how it got attached to this particular plant, but it's a lovely plant. It blooms in the spring, and it has little white berries. off 3 or 4 counties further west than it should be. So that makes it kind of special. And there's a lot of them up on the bluff top and on the western slope of the bluff. So it's kind of cool thing that we have here too. One of the advantages we have is all the ponds that John Wilson built suddenly became a wildlife sanctuary. With birds, there's birds out there all the time, especially in the wintertime. There's about 12 different species of ducks that take up in the main pond. And they wouldn't have been there before. As you know, Texas has basically like one lake that's a natural lake. So all these stock ponds and these big ponds that were built over the years have really been booming wildlife, especially during droughts. There are several major develops that have been underway at the reserve the last 6 or 7 years. These are 3 that are particularly mentioned. They're all ongoing. The bird habitat, project funded by Audubon, and we've had some difficulty with because our first effort was not very successful, so we're going to take a different arrangement. The pollinator meadow, which is when the Bowman Springs, you all know, those of you who know what Bowman Springs was widened about 5 or 6 years ago. It took a slice of the preserve off here that was Arlington property, and went to Gold Road, Light Road, and this had been kind of honky, straight, at the intersection was straight with Pennsylvania. And the other side was better to bend it around, so bend around and go where Dick Price, so it comes out. So they added 2 acres of new land preserve down here that we really decided to make into a palm area. So that's been a meadow that we're trying to make it look like it did 200 years ago. And that's about 6 or 7 years on, and we're making progress over here. Another thing is on the north side, where I showed you where they were farming, it was also on soil. We're also trying to bring that back the way it looked 200 years ago. That means getting rid of a lot of trees. Trees over time come in, especially when you don't have wildfires, you don't have deer and bison that eat the little saplings. So they kind of will take over the prairie if something's not done. So we've gone in there, and with the volunteers that we have, we started 3 years ago, and we're making great progress there as well. It looks very barren now, because that's after the tractors have gone through and dug everything out, and we started taking out the trees. So it's pretty cool. This scarlet spiderling is one of the great surprises. A lot of them don't show up until you get rid of the trees. All of a sudden, seeds that have been in the prairie for maybe decades, suddenly they get sunlight and they get more, and they show their colors. So this cute little guy, this scarlet spiderling, shows up in about August, and that flower is teeny, teeny, tiny. That bracket is not much bigger than diameter than a quarter, but it's all over in a certain section of the prairie. So that's kind of a neat thing. I get very excited about it. We also have citizen naturalists, citizen scientists involved in a program called iNaturalist. It's a little bit hard for me to describe, but I'll do my best right here. I take my camera out to the reserve and I see something into a flower, like the scarlet spider. This is a cool thing. I'll take a picture, I'll load it up on the internet to a certain site, and it's a smart site. So it can look at the picture, and it'll give me a clue as to what it is. And it'll say, well, it looks like this scarlet spider. Let's just see if it is or not. So push the button, says scarlet spider, and then an audience of naturalists from around the world will take a look at that picture, and they'll either agree or disagree. And if they agree, well, then you've got something. And the other cool part of it is that photograph is rooted on this virtual map of the preserve. So, for instance, green is plants. So it's got a little dot. So you pull up on your laptop, you pull up a map of the preserve. And I know if I go up here, this is how I found that picture. I know the spider was up there somewhere, so I keep clicking on the little green dots until one comes up that says scarlet spider. Yeah, that's where it is. So it's really kind of a cool thing. So over time, we've identified 1,700 species. Last time I was here, that number was 1,200. So I had to update the slide after 3 or 4 years to see all the species. One of the species that were most probable There's butterflies, damselflies, dragonflies and damselflies. There are a ton, including 2 or 3 of them that were first discovered here that have been seen nowhere else in Tarrant County. And one of the reasons is, again, the ponds are the site of dragonflies and damselflies. They lay their eggs somehow in the dirt, in the water, in the ponds, and then at some point, the little critter comes out of the bottom of the pond, and suddenly they're dragonflies for a few weeks.
And they're creepy looking little things.
Yes.
It almost looks like a salamander little creature thing.
So anyway, it's a great time to go out there to see all sorts of insects.
You can also download the iNaturalist on your phone now. I have it on mine.
Good.
I have it on mine.
Yeah, there you go.
We're citizen science.
Citizen science, yes. Another thing we rely on is volunteers. These are volunteers from South Point Constructors. This is a construction company that's in the middle of this like 6-year program to reorient 287 and 820 and I-20, the big huge interchange. These are the guys that their day job is to go out there and move their heavy equipment and move dirt around and build bridges and so on. But they've come out to the preserve on several occasions to help us out. And about 3 weeks ago, they were out there and they helped build 3 new bridges over very muddy spots in the reserve. So those are trail bridges, and these are the guys that do it. We rely on volunteers to do this. This is on the Pollinator Meadow about 5 or 6 years ago when we were first seeding it. Every third Saturday of the month, we have volunteers come out to the parking lot and they work from 9 to noon. And this coming Saturday is the 3rd Saturday, so we'll be out planting some seeds and clearing some brush and cleaning some privet and doing all sorts of wonderful stuff. That is it. Thank you. That was an awful lot of pictures. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you'd like a guided tour, there's my email address if you have it. Be a group or just an individual for as long as you want, from 20 minutes to an hour and a half. Thank you.
Right. Any questions? Sure, somebody's got a question.
Lucy, Parks and Wildlife Department stock those ponds?
You say that?
Parks and Wildlife stock those ponds?
They did once.
Once.
I don't know what they stocked them with, but there's fishermen are probably our most loyal visitors. They're out all the time, mostly at the main pond, and the big pond out there. And it's all catching crickets.
Lots of turtles too.
Yes.
Lots of turtles out there. You might tell them about some of the jelly programs out there oftentimes.
Yeah, we have, the best way to keep up with things is a Facebook page. If you dial up, if you just type in Sheri Capehart on Facebook, I think it pops up. The name of our group is the Friends of Sheri Capehart Nature Preserve. On our website, I think we probably link to our newsletter and also events. For instance, in the last 2 months, just yesterday, we had a yucca moth walk. What is that exactly? Well, the yucca, those yuccas require only one insect for pollination. Bees don't worry. It's a particular moth. It's a white moth about this big, and it's called the yucca moth. And the yucca moth is particularly designed so it can pollinate those flowers. The flowers are cut like this, kind of deep, and so this moth can get in there and pollinate, and it's part of their complex process. And if they lay eggs, and I can't begin to tell you, but you can see them only at dusk when they're in bloom. So where the bats are coming from as they fly over the pond. Darn cool thing. And so that's kind of an example. One more sort of common thing is sort of a, how do I say it, informal nature neighbors mindfulness wandering through the preserve for 2 hours. So people get together in the morning, on the weekend, Saturday. There's a host, sort of guide, and talk a little bit, and people spread out, preserve, come back just before noon, sit down, chat about the things they've seen and so on, and very sort of friendly. They're crazy about insects and all sorts of critters, spiders and things like that. So those are examples of different things that are going on. And actually, the best way to learn is to come out and volunteer, because you get to walk to a certain part of the preserve and you hang around these reindeers. You've been doing this far longer than I have. They know so much, and kind of rubs off and you can listen to them talk about weird and things that go on.
So I do have a question. Okay, back in the Indian days, what kind of animals were out there? Deer, which we don't have now.
They were deer because of that dig. They found deer bones. They did not find bison bones, but there were bison here. The thought was the bison may have been a little bit further away, like maybe 5 miles further away from here, not typically common here. So the deer are gone. There are not any deer. The Arlington Animal Control says there are no deer in the city of Arlington, period. So I think further south, there's outskirts of Kennedale, are there deer in Kennedale?
Oh, unless they're not.
I've heard one there is same round there now, right by the Gold Creek over there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's.
I think they're just not good enough food. Not good enough food.
Was there bears?
Well,
There were bears. There, yeah, sure.
Oh, my.
They're gone. And back, 7,000 years ago, there was some sort of exotic animals too. Saber-toothed tigers and sloths and other things like that. First men, to come over on the land bridge, these were animals that were easy prey to human beings. So they wiped out a lot of, and caused to be extinct a lot of interesting animals who could withstand the onslaught of human beings. And in fact, that's something that's still going on today, because all our activities are threatening all sorts of other species today. So it's not something that's stopped with modern man.
Too many houses and people now.
Exactly.
Oh, and I have another question. I thought this was interesting when you talked about it before. The little animal tunnels to help them get across the street. Where you have that picture where they go under the street to go up to the preserve.
Right, there's a culvert that's about 4 feet high, and it goes under Pennsylvania into the Village Creek Drainage. Is that called Whiting Creek? I'm not sure what the name is.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that is a passageway. They set up once in a while our cameras down there. We have a car, anything bigger than that. Ooh, we know there's foxes that are hanging out there. And we also tried with the light Bowman Springs. We tried very hard. My predecessor did to get a wildlife tunnel and drainage in the Bowman Springs. Tunnel with a nice, very nice tunnel, a pretty wild section of drainage. There's just a couple of houses there, but we dips down and open those. And that's something Kennedale is very aware of. It's planning people through time, and as they have their master plans of what they want. And there's this, everything that's in the floodplain, they kind of think set aside for the sort of recreational parkland.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like I think. We're Pennsylvania and Bowman Springs cross. There's the old end there. It's kind of floodplain, so it will never be developed. It will be in that golf. The driving range down there. It's a driving range because it's floodplains.
Yeah.
So I think long-term Kennedale's I've seen the map, and I assume they're continuing to do that. It's a long range, it's probably 50-year looking, so Kennedale, I assume, is still doing that sort of stuff. It's really good to want to cooperate as much as possible.
The Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts camp over there?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
But the Eagle Scout did repair your bridge.
Yes.
We
Yeah,
got,
the new bridge, I think.
yeah.
He did a great job.
He just did his, what do they call it, what is it called?
Eagle Scout.
Whatever it is, yeah, he just did that like 2 weeks ago, and they had pictures all of the bridge and everything, so. It looked really nice.
You had a question?
Yeah, I noticed the name Kennedale a couple of times. Was that like a local Native American tribe?
They were primarily in East Texas, and they were a farming culture. And there were a lot of, I guess they call it the Mississippian cultures, the broad name for a bunch of these tribes that were farming. And they lived in East Texas for a long period of time, and probably elsewhere further east as well, Louisiana and so forth. And so they were pushed out by the Europeans that came in. And it was just a land grab, it's basically just a land grab, free land and that tract, all sorts of ne'er-do-wells and other people that came in and wanted, some of them from Europe, where they had no opportunities to have their own land at all, so coming to America is a chance to get free land, except for sorry people there. So anyway, they were driven east. And most places I didn't talk about it, was a battle in 1841 called the Battle of Village Creek. And at that time, when there were 3,000 people from several different tribes, and more cattle than anybody else, including Cherokees and others that had been driven. One of the Cherokees were from North Carolina, and were driven out by Andrew Jackson and the Trail of Tears. They had to go across the Mississippi. They were not allowed to be east of Mississippi. So there was a great upheaval of a lot of human beings. So they sought refuge for maybe 5, 6, 7 years along Village Creek. They started farming and getting land. But there was pressure in the Republic of Texas. The Republic of Texas militia was getting heat from settlers who had run into the Indians that were involved killings and so forth. And so they settlers wanted protections, and so the militia kept chasing the Indians further and further away. So eventually there was a battle in 1841, Battle of the Creek. The Indians won the first battle. They killed one of the militia officers and wounded another one. The militia had to withdraw. It was about 6 weeks. They gathered some more forces. When they came back to Village Creek, it was abandoned. There was nobody there. And that part of it was great descriptions of what they found. They found all this abandoned stuff, abandoned houses, and scribes who were part of the militia unit wrote down what they saw. So that's why we have a good sense of what this village was.
And so was Captain, or what do they call it? Denton was one of the ones that was killed, and that's where Denton was.
I think that's right.
Because remember when y'all were going to do that joint discussion, you were going to do,
Right.
and then the other man came and y'all were going to, you didn't ever get to do it together, but he had done his one time, you had done yours. Well, that's what he talked about, where this one was killed, where this one, and it just went up, and of course, Arlington Lake wasn't there then, but it just went, followed the creek, and ended up way towards Denton. And he taught, that just stuck in on me. I'm horrible on remembering history, but I remember that.
And the initial Texas militia was lucky because there were 1,000 braves that were living on the Village Creek. But at that time, 500 of them were all hunting buffalo. So they were gone. But even then, the ones that remained were able to chase off the militia until they decided to abandon camp and move to safety further.
And so they lived in those little, like, grass-looking,
Probably, yeah.
not like teepees, like normally some
No,
teepees.
Yeah.
Little
Mountain
mounds.
things. And
Yeah.
they had a platform. There's a picture back that I showed you. Show yours. The cat was a. That's from the Kennedale Village of probably was something. There's a cattle reservation in Oklahoma today, the remnants of it.
Very interesting.
Kind of yurts. Is that right, Wayne? Yurt, those are yurts, aren't they?
Yep.
Isn't that what they call glamping? Glamping, the high-end camping.
Well, we want to thank you, yeah, like you said, this is like the third time to do it. The first time, I think it was me and Darlene here, and Linda. I don't know if Linda was on with us, anyway, it was just a few of us here, and we thought it was so great. We asked you back again, there was a few more, and you had a few more things added to your person, and now you come back again and you've got a whole bunch of things, so it gets better and better. So thank